The internet has become part and parcel of modern day life, with us youngsters spending more and more time online. With technology moving at such a fast pace, do we ever stop to really think how this is affecting us, both socially and spiritually? Join me for real stories, real issues, and real views. This is Real Talk. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show. I'll be your host for the next 40 minutes as we continue to tackle issues that affect young people in today's society. Now, throughout the series, we've been having a look at a whole range of issues, and from the feedback we've been getting, it seems that people out there are enjoying the programs, they're benefiting from them as well, which is fantastic. Do remember, this is your show, and if you want to give us any suggestions of topics to discuss in future programs, you can always do that. Our address is there for you at the bottom of the screen. It's realtalk@mta.tv. On today's program, like we said at the beginning of the show, we're going to be looking at the internet and also having a look at social networking sites and having a look at our roles and responsibilities with that. How does the internet actually affect us? Today, I'm joined by a fantastic panel, and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure to have you in the studio with me today. I'd like to start by introducing our guests. First of all, I'm joined by Sayyid Nasir Ahmed, who's the chairman of MTA International. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Real Talk. Also, brother Nasrullah Ahmed, who is the president of the Milwaukee Jamaat in the USA. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the show. And it's a real honor to have Abdul Wahab Adam Saab, who is the Amir of Jamaat Ahmadiyya in Ghana. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the show. And lastly but not least, I'm joined by Ibrahim Noonan Saab, who is the missionary in charge of Ireland. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program. Shah Saab, if I could start with you first. We're talking about the internet, we're talking about social networking sites. It's something that's become more of an issue these days, and it seems that youngsters are using the internet more and more. Do you think we're becoming too reliant on the internet? Are we using it too much?
Actually, I'll tell you, if we start off from, say, about 10 years ago, Rabi Rahimahullah, at one stage when the internet was very young, very in its initial stages, and people starting interacting on internet, and there were news of leakages and the security matters and everything. Internet was actually banned for Jamaat members to use, and that is, I'm talking of just internet on itself, wider internet. But then, very soon, it was realized, and Allah Ta'ala gives this foresight to his Khalifa that he has to make the right decision for the given time. And it is always, it is our belief, it is our iman that Khalifatul Masih's decisions are guided by Allah for that time, always. There may be one decision at a certain time, but with the given time, with the evolution of the things and changes, Khalifatul Masih revises his decision under the guidance of Allah. And that's exactly what happened, that when initially the internet started, it was, we were not allowed to, we started using it, even in MTA, but we were advised, because of certain issues, that we should not use email.
So how has the internet developed over those last 10 years to get to where we are now?
Well, this is it. Then gradually, as the world started to become dependent upon on the internet, gradually the Jamaat was advised to make use of the necessary parts of the internet or necessary factions of the internet as we go along. And then we will come to later stage when we are discussing about what's current state of.
I mean, interesting point Shah Saab just raised there is that using the necessary parts of the internet. Do you think that's a good factor that we should, a guiding factor that we should keep in mind when we're using the internet to find out what is actually necessary and what maybe isn't?
Yeah, I think that's true. And you know, we are religious people and we're raising children, and I think that we enjoy the technology. I think technology is great, but I think it's the misuse of the technology that oftentimes make it detrimental to morally and otherwise, for not only for us but for our children. So I think the internet is here. I think that we should utilize the technology, but use it properly. And when we get to the point of with our children and our young people, I think the technology is there now where you can enact those mechanical things in order to protect and security for instance, identity theft and some of the other things, or predators perhaps that will endanger the lives of our young people. So when we get to that part, perhaps we can have more of a deep discussion. But the technology, I think it's great. And in fact, the promised Messiah, peace and blessing of God be upon him, had indicated that the technology actually is developed for us. So we shouldn't shun the technology. I think we should try to use it, but use it wisely.
Amir Saab, turning to you, I mean, when we've grown up, the younger generation here, the internet's always sort of been around. But obviously from your perspective, you've seen it develop and you've seen it grow. How has that been for you?
Well, I agree with him that Islam is a global religious community. And right in the Holy Quran, you have prophecies about the latter days when the Prophet Messiah will appear. And you have, for instance, the prophecy about إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا. A time will come when the earth will be shaking and the treasures embedded in the earth will all come out. Now that shows that a time was to come when we will have such technology that will make the conveyance of the message of the promised Messiah as given by the Holy Prophet of Islam ﷺ, easier and also global. And I think the internet answers to that need. But as it has been emphasized, you know, anything that God has given to man can be used either positively or negatively. And so is the case with all the other inventions. You go to sit on a plane to fly to, say, Ghana or Nigeria, and you are not quite sure what is going to happen on the way. But it is a very, very useful thing. You couldn't walk all the way to Ghana. So you have no alternative but to use it. What is important is you pray before you start the journey, and you are sure that you are not going to, you know, meddle in things that will, you know, sort of waste your morality and spirituality.
Maulana Saab, would you agree with that? I mean, we're saying here that the internet is a tool, and it depends on how you actually use that tool.
Absolutely. I just want to take a step back to what Nasir Saab said, that about the early days. I think this is a very important point because it can be said and has been said. It has been said by other communities about how Khalifatul Masih, the fourth in the past, has said something else and present advice is something else. What I think is important to understand is when internet started, no one knew how this was going to go. Right. No one knew how this was going to pan out. Right. So therefore, even there was no regulation, it wasn't regulated at the time. So I think the advice of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih was absolutely right for that time. 10 years, 15 years later, there is regulation, there are organizations in place which are regulating all these things, so you can be at least sure that it's going to be directed in the right way. But I think as a tool, I think it is a very important tool. But as Amir Saab said, a Muslim, every time a Muslim does anything, you should always do it in the beginning in the name of Allah, the Gracious and Merciful. And your intention should be to use it for the right reason. Right. Because you can go either way. And that is probably where the danger is in internet and these things, that you can go the other way. So I think it's an excellent tool, but as long as you're using it for the right reasons, and of course for righteous reasons, then there's no harm in it.
Okay. Nasir Saab, turning back to you, I mean, this is a program for the youth and the youngsters who are watching as well. How do they know that they're using it for the right reasons? And how can you be sure that you're not being strayed away? Because at the same time, it's not always easy to know yourself if you're going astray. Sometimes someone else has to tell you that, you know, this is not the best use of time, or maybe you shouldn't be doing this.
I think, Ghalib, for that, and I hope I've got so many respected Maulanas sitting over here as well, would guide me or assert what I'm going to say, that the simple rule for this purpose is that the morals which you follow in your normal life, if you follow the same practice of morality in the use of technology, including internet, including Twitter, including YouTube, People's, MySpace, whatever, if you are maintaining that sense of morality, that principle of morality, that this is right, this is wrong, here we do not intermix with sexes, here we do not do this, you keep that in the use of internet, then it's okay. Then that is the general rule which I think should be applicable.
Okay. All right.
If
Let's,
what we in normal life we're saying, okay, if I am going to do this, this is wrong for me from Islam's point of view, from Jamaat's point of view, from general morality's point of view, from human morality. The same thing if you keep in mind when using internet.
yeah, no, that's a
You
good
should
guiding
not go,
principle.
you know.
Let's turn to the audience. We've got some youngsters here in the audience today. What are your views when you're using the internet? How do you keep that balance as well? Osama, do you use the internet maybe at work as well? How has it affected?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, internet is available everywhere nowadays, and obviously people are making use of it, and also the improper use of internet is also, you know, happening in this world. But obviously, when you are using internet, or you need to make sure that you go to the right sources, whatever you're finding information for. And obviously, as you also said before, that, you know, Wikipedia and sites like this, they have got some information which is not very reliable, as if you can put in. And obviously, I mean, there are websites which are not properly very good to use. And
We should all ask ourselves the question is that when we are browsing and we come across something which as a human being, as a human nature would attract you, you would feel like looking at it or going further deeper into it and opening the pages, etc., etc. But we know that that is wrong. We know that it is immoral. What do we do then? That is the question we should ask all the time.
Sorry, myself, please.
Well, you know, that is where leadership becomes very crucial.
Right.
You know, by the grace of the Almighty, those of us who are here as members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community are guided at every step. You've got the Khalifatul Masih himself, who guides the whole community, and by the grace of God, we also have the MTA. So all over the world, we are listening to him every Friday. No question about that. Wherever we are in the world, we are listening to him. One message delivered to the entire globe. So there we get our guidance, first and foremost.
Mulana Sab, you got something like that?
No, it's just, I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us something within us which is called the conscious. He has inherited in us. Hazrat Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that when you're in doubt of anything, keep away from it. So these are the things which are there for us, every young person, every much younger people, right? They have this thing within them. They know that there's always something telling them there's something wrong with this website, or the signs are there, and that's where you have to develop the courage, the spiritual courage to just abstain and keep away from those things. I mean, it's not that we don't switch on the internet and suddenly something innocent comes on and you just go into it. There's always something indicating that there's something maybe wrong with this. So I think that's also very important for us to have the courage and be able to move away from that site or whatever the case may be.
One thing, Amir Saab mentioned the different auxiliary organizations within the Jamaat and their role, and I have to turn to you because for a time you were Sadr of Khudam al-Ahmadiyya here in the UK. How do you engage in a discussion with the younger generation, and how do you get them to be aware of the issues that are involved in this?
I think personally, Amir Saab has already touched upon it, and that is where you help them to develop their spiritual life, their spiritual awareness, their God realization within them. That's where you begin, because you see, a person with morals, whoever he or she is, they know the limits. There's some warnings, there's some signals within themselves that this is not right. I mean, look, for example, most of us, in fact, I would assume all of us sitting here, but a lot of people won't walk into a shop and just automatically steal something, because before you do that, you know that it's wrong to do that. Okay. So I think for me it is just helping Khudam understand. I mean, at least when I was Sadr Khudam al-Ahmadiyya, that's what I tried to do. I tried to inculcate in the hearts of the Khudam to become aware of their spiritual side, and that is aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, aware of their spiritual being. And you know, once you have any relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know that this is not the path you should be taking.
Okay, fantastic. Nasrullah Saab, turning to you, what's it like over there in the US in terms of internet uses? Because people seem to see that the internet is a phenomenon that only happens in the West, and they have this concept that, you know, people in Western countries are always online, they've got their mobile devices, they're always connecting. What's it actually like on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I think actually I concur with everything that was said here. Of course, keeping in mind that in America we have a very, very liberal society, like perhaps in France or here in England. So it's you know, the morality there it's a little, I think it's a little different. Again, I'm speaking in terms of the liberalism, the very liberalness of the parents and what goes on. So oftentimes in America the parents might be working 16, 17, 18 hours. Right. And so before the technology had developed to where it is today, where we're using the technology and the internet, I think there was a television. So now you know, the young people are being babysit. We call babysit. In other words, you know, there's a thing in the United States, it's called the children have been locked out. In other words, the parents are working, they have their own key, they can enter the house by themselves. So there's no one there monitoring what they do. So what happened, a child come home and they can get on the internet themselves, and they can be on there for hours. So there's no monitoring. So with us from the you know, Ahmadiyyat community, I think that a lot of it, we always say that the first teachers are the parents. Right. So if the parents, you know, have developed in those children, boy or girl, at an early age, a morality, a sense of trust and respect and communication. So when the child is working using the internet, and of course the parents sit that child down and let them be aware of the dangers that can, you know, that can occur in using this internet. I think that, and having trust in that child, I think that as a child developed, or even at a young age, a child will have some sense of that this is danger, I'm not going to go there. It's like, you know, a child will touch the stove and get burnt, and you know, the parents have to be there to guide them that this is hot, you'll hurt yourself. So we have a responsibility as elders in order to make sure the youngsters that they're moving in the right direction and we can protect them.
It's very appropriate. It's said by Brother Nasrullah. And Ibrahim Sahib was touching upon it earlier on, that I think with the parents getting busier and leaving the children alone at home and all, the first thing which comes more important is the spiritual training of the children, that they should themselves be monitoring themselves, in the sense that the parents should have some confidence in, okay, we brought up the children, they have been spiritually trained in the sense that if they are left alone with these things, they'll to some extent take care of it. But monitoring is very important. Children are children, youngsters are youngsters, who cannot expect them to be adults.
You have to go through that learning
absolutely,
stage,
you've got to go through the learning stages. And I mean, I personally, for younger children at home, I have them to give me the passwords. We have their passwords. Right. So if they have any internet sites or which they need to use for their educational purposes, they know that we have the passwords. And I think the parents should have the younger, particularly the younger children's passwords. If the children are not doing anything wrong, there's no reason why they should be talking of privacy. What's privacy from parents?
The signs are there for the parents to see.
Right.
I mean, they're there. I mean, signs like if your son or daughter suddenly closes the door when you're passing and they're on the laptop, you know, why did they close the door? And, you know, you walk in, what's going on? You know, I mean,
and
these are the signs are there.
That's the reason we advocate that the computer which is used by children, the laptop, they should be using in the family room rather than hiding away and locking themselves up in a room for hours and sitting there. Okay. And that's where the trouble starts.
We mentioned some good points. I want to see if any of these have been put into practice, and what's your views on this? Quddus, have you got?
First of all, with regards to monitoring, for instance, my parents, they're not exactly computer friendly or they're not computer literate. Right. So just for the panel, like how would you go around tackling that? Right. I mean, there's a lot of parents out there who don't know how to switch on a computer, who don't know the signs, etc.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So what's the panel? No, I totally agree, but of course you're talking about monitoring as well. Yeah. They go hand in hand.
Yeah, hand in hand. So this is where, as I say, the spiritual training and the parents' responsibility in the sense that at least to keep the deterrent of the visual monitoring, even if they are not so much computer literate.
I think you'll find that, you know, even let's look outside our own community, Christian communities or even Jewish communities, you'll find those parents who mold their children from a very young age in a moral, spiritual fashion. They don't just mold them, they put a trust on them that we will give you this room, I mean this movement to do, but on the trust part, that we trust you, or you won't break our trust. That's very important, because I think any child who grows up into a teenager, who has developed this relationship with their parents, that they are allowing us this flexibility on the basis of trust. And if they're brought up in a very moral, spiritual way, at least to my experience, very few break that trust. They always are reminded of this thing. I think this is very important. And then you can be sure that when your child is going out, that you trust them. I mean, that's a very important relationship.
Yeah, no, that's a very
has to be there between the parents. If that trust is not there, then yes, anything can happen. Anything.
And Rishabh, do you want to add
yes,
something?
the point that he was making was that the parents themselves might be computer illiterate.
Yeah.
Now, if the children are watching anything that might not be wholesome, it doesn't require somebody to be computer literate to detect it. I mean, the computer is there. And if there is something which is unbecoming, say pornography, for instance, I mean, parents do not have to be computer literate to be able to detect that. So they will see it straight away. And I'm quite sure that the children who would be watching it would also try to hide it somehow.
All right, exactly. I want to get a few more points from the audience as well. Kasa, have you got anything you'd like to add to that?
I think that the bringing up of a child starts from the very beginning. In a book I was reading of Hazrat Khalifa Masih II, he said that if you, from the very beginning, you should develop a sense of self-control in a child. Meaning that if you're going to give a present to your child, say for instance Eid or something, then you should put that present in front of him before, and you should say to him, you're not going to open it until Eid. Right. This is what Khalifa Sani said. From that, he develops a self-control within himself. And Hazura said that if you hide things from him from the very beginning, because I know parents like to hide presents, it's a tradition, I think, in the West, they hide presents before. Then that leads up to the child hiding things from you when he grows up as well.
Right, okay,
that's
fantastic. Yusuf, can I go to you for some points as well? The discussion we've been having at the moment about our responsibilities online, what are your views on that?
I think that it's important to mention that we're talking about the internet in the home, that technology is moving so fast that it's no longer exclusively to be found in the PC. There is Wi-Fi, you can go to a park, away, or a hotel.
Mobile devices, it's everywhere,
mobile
isn't it?
phone. Yeah. So it's not possible anymore for the parents to be able to monitor. So spiritual monitoring is now what we should be talking about, and this is just as the brother has been speaking about. It's not anymore just responsibility of the parents, it's the wider society. Okay. And so I just think I wanted to mention that.
Fantastic. Let me get one more view from the back. Anyone here like to add something? And what are our responsibilities? How do we? I mean, we've talked about having our own sort of set of guidelines. How do you build that? How do you develop that yourself?
I agree with, as the panel said before as well, that it's. I think Maulana Ibrahim Sahib said that it's every person's been given its conscience. And I think that the Holy Prophet ﷺ has mentioned it quite beautifully in his hadith as well. And he said that how to know that if you're committing a sin is that it triggers in your soul or your heart, so you'd know it there as well. So I think the important bit here is that you should constantly be self-assessing yourself. And I think when you're doing that, then I think you'll be refraining from the dangers of the internet.
Okay, all right, exactly. Just moving back to the panel now, Nasrullah Sahib, turning to you. We've talked about the dangers of it. We've talked about some of the negative aspects of the internet. Can we go into some that are more sort of not as easily thought of? Sometimes just wasting time online, time usage is a bad thing. Sometimes what I'm trying to say is that the negative aspects are not always very clear. Yes. You don't always realize that you're not using it in the right way. Very
good. I think that there studies have been done, especially in the US and other countries, of course, as a result of the internet and that our young people, focusing on the young again, that they have been spending so much time on the internet, that now it's beginning to affect their health. Right. So they find that, for instance, I'm not a physician, we have a number of physicians in our community, they've been finding that diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, and all of those things, because the young people are spending so many hours behind the internet, and of course they're drinking these sodas and their eating habits have changed.
It's the whole lifestyle that comes with it.
Lifestyle, exactly. And so a young child in the adolescent years, we are social beings. So ultimately, if that child don't interact with other human beings, then you're missing something. And so that will affect you psychologically, it'll affect you physiologically in all areas. And the child later on go to school and they would say the child either become a bully or become introverted, or they don't want to interact or share with other children. So this have a profound effect on the child. So again, we were talking about monitoring and all of those things, but this is where again the parent, now in this particular situation, the parent can look at a child and say, well, my son is getting so, he is so introverted, he's not coming out, he's not eating right, he is, his room is full of chips and sodas, and I go to the pediatrician and he's way overweight, and all of these things. So from that perspective, I think that it can be a negative aspect. And again, here again is the misuse and the overindulgence that in fact create those.
It's about not keeping a balance, isn't it?
Absolutely, you have to maintain the balance.
We're going to touch on some of those issues later on. We just need to take a short break, but stay with us. We'll be carrying on the discussion after then. So we'll be back in just a moment or so.
वक्त था वक्त मसीहा न किसी और का वक्त था वक्त मसीहा न किसी और का वक्त मैं न आता तो कोई और ही आया होता मैं न आता तो कोई और ही आया होता जिंदाबाद जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the second half of this program. Today we've been talking about the internet and we're going to be carrying on that discussion right now. Nasir Saab, if I could start with you. In the first half of the program we were talking about the general issues of the internet. Specifically I want to talk about Jamaat usage of it. As chairman of MTA International, you know more than anyone else how the media has affected the Jamaat, how we've been able to use the media in a positive way. So could you tell us a little bit about that, how it's developed, and how we're actually using these new media to convey the message of Islam and Ahmadiyyat?
Well, as Brother Nasrullah Sahab and Amir Sahab endorsed it later, that the saying of Hazrat Masih Maud, which is the gist of it is that the technology and the development of the world will be left for Jamaat to make the best benefit and use of it, which alhamdulillah under the very able guidance of Khulafa of the time, we've always done that. The Jamaat have always done that since the Khilafat. And exactly the same applies now, that as we go along, the technologies will develop in the media industry and everywhere else as well. As we see within our MTA International, MTA's setup as well, as the technology develops, we try to make the best use of the evolution which happens within that industry as much as we can. And that applies to the use of internet and the media as well. And when we talk of media, in that we also have the television, the use of the mobile phone, which we are not discussing right now, and the texting, as the photo messaging, and there are all these things are all part of the wider media. And of course the PlayStation and the games, etc. And you can have absolutely horrific games, which can ruin your, mentally. The children have a very long-term effect. So all these things have to be used within the perspective of morality. That's the important thing.
More and more people are using these websites, and there was a statistic of there's something like 400 million people who are on Facebook at the moment. When you're living in that sort of environment, I'm talking as from a young person's perspective, if all your friends are online, if all of them have a Facebook account, you're going to be the odd one out. And surely that's going to put some sort of peer pressure on you to sign up to have an account and things like that as well. Maulana Sahab, turning to you, I mean, wouldn't that peer pressure affect youngsters?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I recently met a child who was 9 years old on Facebook. I mean, who told me that they had a Facebook account. Now, I was a bit surprised out of a 9-year-old child needing a Facebook account, because what did that child have to talk to anyone on Facebook at that age? This is the only negative thing I see where, you know, should parents even allow the children at that age? Teenagers or young adults like yourselves who may be using it to contact friends or looking at having discussions with people, I mean, they're there and they're being used, and there's no, everything comes down to there's no harm in them as long as you use them rightly and correctly. I mean, not so long ago, you know, there was one lady who mentioned that she made the mistake of putting all her personal information on Facebook, and that was spread out to everyone. This is where you have to use your common sense. And if you're going to use it because you have to use it, as Chairman Sub said. If you have to use it because of your work or you are socializing with some friends, but use it in a way which is sensible as well. It's there. I mean, we should not ignore this modern technology. We can't ignore it, because Allah gives us things for the good part of them as well. I mean, if you go back to the time of Hazrat Muhammad Messiah, when books were being printed in greater mass, he utilized that medium at that time to spread the message of Islam. The same is going to be the case with Facebook and these things. I mean, YouTube, for example, definitely, I must admit, I was a little behind on YouTube. I mean, I used to hear people talking about YouTube. In fact, Brother Yusuf was one of the ones who introduced me to YouTube. Then I realized the benefits of it when you wanted to go and see, again, Hadrat Khalifa al-Masih al-Khamis anhu's Adil bin al-Aziz khutbas or things like that. So they're there, and they should be utilized in the right way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I know people have been using the internet so much on a regular basis that they've had Facebook accounts or something, and then after a while they've got rid of them, and they've realized actually they didn't miss it that much. There wasn't that much.
Lots of times people
that they needed
will use things out of internet purely out of curiosity, purely because their people around them are doing them. So soon they will find out that no, there's nothing novel about it, there's nothing attractive, and they'll get out of it. But again, as Misa was saying, is getting hooked. Somebody told me yesterday, because MTA did make a site on Facebook with the permission of Huzur Anwar, and as I say, Huzur Anwar has allowed these things like use of Facebook, use of Twitter. Twitter was banned about a year ago, but now the central press has got its own Twitter site as well as a Facebook site. But again, it is extremely important. We are not, and Huzur Anwar is not condoning the use of these sites free for all kind of thing. If they have to be used, they have to be used in a very constrained manner and on the basis of the necessity and need and inevitability. That is important. And again, the intermixing of sexes, the things which we would not do in our normal day-to-day life, we should not maintain that and not do on the same things on these Facebooks and sites.
I just want to move to the audience now. I mean, you guys use the internet on a daily basis. Well, we've talked about guiding principle that if you're not going to do something in normal life, you know, down the street, you wouldn't do it online. But at the same time, don't you think it's a lot easier to fall into these habits online than it is in your day-to-day life? Let's get some points raised. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think it is, but I think the Jamaat has an important role to play in the internet as well, making it useful for people of our age and Khuddam and just everyone in general. For instance, like in YouTube, there's a lot of Jamaat material now. I know the USA Jamaat have put a lot of very, very interesting videos on. I think it's called Messiah Films or something, and they're really, really interesting. Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya UK, MTA have got a lot now, so it's a way of occupying Khuddam to go into that instead of going into watching a man fall down the stairs and laughing at that.
There's a whole host of other videos you can watch to waste your time.
Exactly. So getting people, you know, with Facebook and these other sites to get them involved through the Jamaat.
Specifically, I mean, turning to social networking sites, because I think the problem is at the moment people are saying that girls and boys are talking, you're talking to people, maybe you're working with someone, you've got them on your social network site, and you speak to them in a way that maybe you wouldn't speak to them when you're at work, because there's obvious boundaries there. But online, that's right. Online it's a bit different. It's a different environment online. So do you find that? Do you think other people are affected by that?
It's a lot easier to maybe cross those boundaries that you wouldn't do on a physical basis. But I think it's all about knowing your limits, and again, that if the Jamaat uses them and accesses them and makes it a way that you utilize the Jamaat facilities online rather than going on random stuff, then it's a lot.
I mean, everyone uses the internet. Do you think people actually sit there and discuss these dangers together as young people? You know, if we're all affected by it, do you actually think that we're doing enough ourselves to, you know, sit down and, you know, let's discuss this. How do we deal with this problem together?
I think we could do more. I think you can always do more. But I think that there are being steps taken a lot. I think maybe in, as we mentioned before, that it's difficult that parents are getting a lot more busy. Maybe it's a role that in primary schools that they educate us as well. Maybe it's a role of the society to do a lot more as well. I think maybe they're lacking in some respects.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's...
Right, yeah, okay. Gus, you had your hand up. You've got one point.
My opinion with regards to interaction between like chatting and everything, I've always considered it not appropriate because someone once told me that when I used to use MSN back in, you know, a few years ago, they used to say that you start a conversation with salam and how you doing.
Yeah.
He says, and then in the first 2 minutes it will be useful, but after that you just be talking rubbish basically.
You just be chatting for the sake of
you just be
chatting, right? To keep the conversation going, right?
And you'll be learning how to type basically.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think a lot of youngsters are using computers, are using online chatting services because I think the parents want them to think that they're busy. And the parents think if my kid is using the computer, they're quiet, then, you know, they're working away, that's fine. Children sometimes, I think we're in a bit for catch-22 here. If they go outside, their parents are angry that you're always spending time outside, you're not doing anything at home. If they come at home, they've got nothing else to do, then they're on the internet, then they get told off for using the internet too much. So what do children do in that situation?
The thing to think is, what did they used to do 15 years ago?
Right.
You know, the life still went on, the children still stayed home. But there were other activities to do. It's only that now that we've got these technologies which keep the children occupied and over-occupied, as Brother Nasrullah was saying, that to make them get into the bad habits of eating and sitting and just spending hours and hours. It's just the within limits, everything. And again, on the use of the social networks sites, the position is that we must maintain the morality. Some of the sites are being used for tabligh now.
Right. Yeah.
Lots and lots of people are on their individual level, on their personal level, involved in tabligh. To some extent, yes, it is working as well. It is spreading the message of Ahmadiyyat. But again, you've got to be careful how you conduct yourself, how you present yourself whilst doing that tabligh. You know, that is an extremely sensitive area. You are talking to people as a representative of the Jamaat. You are representing, oh, I'm an Ahmadi, we are like this, look at this. So what kind of a character, what kind of a personality, what kind of an image you are presenting to the other person, you must think that you are, you know, the shape and picture of the Jamaat.
Maulana Sahib, you want to add something to that?
I've seen a case on Facebook, on one of these discussion groups, where one Ahmadi young man was debating with another Muslim, and whatever way he tackled this particular Muslim brother, someone else came on and told him, I know you, and I know that you don't pray 5 times a day, and I know you. I mean, you see, this is very, very important. That, you know, whatever excellent work he may have said over a number of days, and then someone says, I know you, you don't do the Fajr, you don't even pray, I've seen you here and I've seen you there. This is the dangers of the other side of it. So it's whatever you do on Facebook, it is about responsibility. It's about being responsible. And no one should really get involved in doing tabligh on Facebook if they don't have, I shouldn't say if they don't have the knowledge. You don't really need, actually you don't need knowledge to convey the message of God, the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you're going to, you should make sure that your limitations, if you don't have the answer, don't answer. Then you get the answer. That's very, very important. And language is very important as well, because it can, like you mentioned earlier on, you're not in front of somebody. It's not one-to-one, it's not face-to-face. And you can get, if you get angry, you think you can actually become harsh with somebody. No one knows you, they don't even know who you are, you're just a name.
That's right.
But actually, if you're calling yourself an Ahmadi, then you are representing the whole of the Ahmadi Muslim community. It's about responsibility. You have to be responsible.
Mirsab, if you'd like to add something to it.
Yes, well, the point I wanted to make is about a phrase that one of our friends uttered, and that was, the fear of being regarded as the odd one out. It's very, very important.
Yeah, definitely.
The youth of today, they look to funny sort of things, and then they think that if we don't do it, then we are the odd one out. Look at the hippies. They wouldn't take baths. They would live there unkempt hair. Then they have holes in the pants and so on. And people think that they should imitate that.
Right.
If they don't do that, they'll be considered as the odd ones out. We had a professor of a university in the US who did streaking. And the streaking means to go completely out without anything, with just an umbrella on the head, and then he was moving around the campus. So if a professor does that, and the students are thinking that because it's done by a professor, we must also imitate it, then we are all gone.
Yeah,
so a social worker was asked about this. So, well, if you have the permission to do streaking from the hour of 1 to 2, then that's all right. Now, why should we go to all that trouble? You see, the thing is, we must have our principles right. We must keep to those principles. We must be consistent with those principles. We shouldn't allow other people to divert our attention from those principles and do things that we know to be wrong, simply because we want to be considered as in the mainstream and not the odd one out.
Nasrullah Saab, just turning to you, we're running a bit short of time. Just wrapping up, Amir Saab has just talked about having the right role models, having people to look up to. Would your message be to the youngsters out there that, if you are using the internet, use it properly, and we should actually be role models for our younger generation as well as Ahmadi Muslims? Absolutely.
I think as respected Amir Sahib have indicated, every generation there's some challenges. As we move forward into the 21st century, what we see now, and you know that as young people, and a lot of you are going to be young computer engineers and analysts and all of that, young scientists. 10 years from now, what we're talking about might be dated. This might be considered dinosaur in terms of how fast the technology is moving. So I think we just have to use hikmah, wisdom. And we are very fortunate that we have our leader, the Khalifa, and the MTA to listen to him and have his guidance. And having the guidance of the Khalifa, and anything that we might have any problem with or any challenges, or we might be what you call a fuzzy area. Right, Hazur, and ask him, say, Hazur, I'm a young scientist in this area and so forth and so on, or I'm a young person in the society and I'm having these challenges. As respected Amir Sahib said, there's peer pressure. Because everybody's doing it don't mean it is good. So we are moral people, we're spiritual people, we have the best of guidance, we have the Khalifa of the time, and I would submit that whatever is going on, we always look to his guidance. And we as parents, we have a responsibility also. The young men have indicated that they're so savvy with the computer that the parents really can't always keep up with what's going on. So again, with the proper training and the proper, just using the proper what you would say, just being able to decipher between right and wrong and go back to your parents and have a dialogue with your parents. I think we as adults need to talk to our children, even if we don't understand the technology.
And the parents should have an open door for
an open door so that your son and daughter can come to you. And if in a society things are going on, that everybody is doing, I think the parents should see that and say, well, come, Omar or Atia, come and let's talk about this thing. This is not the best thing for you. You have to set an example for everyone. You don't have to follow the crowd. You can be the one that stands out.
You should be proud of that sometimes.
It's just like our young ladies. We are male. You're the young male. Our young ladies stands out because they wear purdah. A majority of them covered and dress appropriately. They don't necessarily have to follow what's going on in campus. So it takes some courage, no doubt. But I think with determination, with some hikmah, with some wisdom, and with the help of the parents and everyone around, I think they'll be able to get through this age of this technology.
That's fantastic. Thank you. So Nasir Saab, any final remarks? How would you like to end the discussion today?
Ghalib, lots of people, from MTA's perspective, lots of people ask us, what is the position in terms of using the social networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, etc., etc. And one thing which I would only say is that from what I understand, what my personal understanding is, that the Khalifatul Masih would like people to use these things only on the basis of necessity, that they are necessary for them and it's inevitable, and also that they're used constructively and morally. That is a very important thing. I don't think there is a complete sort of complete ban on anything, any of the normal sites I'm talking about. But there is always going to be a ban on the misuse and the wrong use of these things. That is inevitable. You know. That's what one must understand, that there is always going to be a ban from social point of view, from religious point of view, and of course from our beloved Imam, Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen, that we must not get indulged into wrong things on the net.
Okay, fantastic. Amir Sahib, just briefly, how would you like to wrap up the discussion that we've had today, or your final points?
Well, I would say that in everything, care should be taken, even when you are eating. You must be very careful that it doesn't choke you. So you eat in a particular way. So in the same vein, I believe that if somebody is using the internet, though it's a very, very good tool for gathering information, one must be very careful not to do it in a way that would damage one's morality and spirituality.
Okay. Mulana Sahib, what's your message to the young people out there watching the program and have listened to today's discussion?
I've been saying this through the whole program, as long as they're responsible. They must be responsible. Just because they're young doesn't mean they don't have any responsibilities. Young people may tend to feel, they say, we're young, the whole world is in front of us, we can do what we want. I used to think that when I was 23 years old. I wasn't, I was wrong. Even young people have a responsibility, must act responsible. And this has been said by all the panel, we can't even begin to understand the blessings that we have a Khalifa. And Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih al-Khamis, his knowledge is deep and he's up with everything. So it's not like he doesn't understand, he understands everything. So when he gives guidance based on a lot of thought and wisdom and prayer. So for me, it's just responsibility. As long as we're responsible and we act responsible, that's the most important. Okay.
All right, Jazakallah. I'm afraid time's run out for today, but I'd like to thank my panel for your input in the discussion. Jazakallah for being in the program, and thank you to the audience for your input as well. You know, if you've been watching at home, I hope you've got the maximum benefit out of this program. Maybe, I mean, your parents and you've been watching with your children, or maybe your children and you want to discuss this at home. The discussion that we've had today, you know, carry it on at home. I think the more people talk about it and the more we discuss it, the better we can deal with these challenges. And if you've got any points you'd like to raise, you can always send it in to us. Our email address is realtalk@mta.tv. You can stay in touch with all the latest Real Talk news and find out what shows we'll be having in the future as well. Our address is www.mta.tv/realtalk, and we have a Twitter page as well. Like we say, we're trying to use the best of these online pages that are available. You can stay in touch and find out what we'll be doing, and it's your opportunity to put in your points of view as well. We'll be back with another edition of Real Talk soon, so I hope you can join us then. But until then, Assalamu alaikum. On today's show, we're going to be looking at climate change, renewable energy and sustainability for the future.
This is panicking now. We should have been doing this 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Renewable energy is expensive at the moment.
There seems to be a consensus now in the scientific community that climate change is man-made.
The Earth cannot reproduce what we need to live on, what we need to drink.
Join me for real stories, real issues and real views. This is Real Talk.